Former and current African presidents held a one-day peace summit in Johannesburg earlier today. The meeting sought to promote peace and security on the continent. ENCA reporter Kaya Lihle Khumalo was there, and he joins us now in studio for more. So Kaya, the question is this: if the AU and SADC struggles to maintain and promote peace on the continent, how then does this group of leaders?
Well, Shahan, they're very adamant that a lot must be done in Africa in making sure that there's a culture that is instilled in making sure that, for example, in our schools, right when the young people are there's that culture inculcated so that when they grow up, there's a very clear understanding. But some of them, these are very old leaders. They're considered as statesmen in their respective countries, and they left office in a very clean way, as it were, where they were not pushed. So they are planning to use that as a leverage, as it were, in making sure that perhaps they're able also to talk to the current heads of state, for example, to look at the security architecture in Africa to change the situation.
Of course, peace is key on the continent. It's something that leaders have been striving to get right for a very long time. But when it comes to elections, there's always still a concern about that. And case in point would be Zimbabwe.
Well, certainly, Shahan, that's very true, especially when you look at Africa. And recently in Zimbabwe, there are lots of hopes that the past elections will present a new start, a fresh start for Harare. So when we got an opportunity to speak to the former Mozambican president, Joaquim Chissano, he was not really keen to say much, but he also alluded to the effects that, this was a great opportunity for Zimbabwe to prove itself, given the fact that, when you look at the events in November, others were concerned because the military was very much at the fore. So, Shahan, if we can take a listen to what former President Chissano said.
And so we know what happened in Zimbabwe. And now they are trying, when they were trying to ratify this, they had some conflicts in how to do it. But finally, the elections were held. And now some will say, no, they were not fair, they were this, they were that. A lot of things will be said. I cannot comment on that because I was not there. I didn't see what happened. I have been observing many elections myself. I saw in one of the countries, again, scenes of police in the streets. In some areas, there were police and armed forces, but which didn't have any influence on the elections results. We have seen a lot of things. So I cannot judge of what happened in Zimbabwe. Maybe those forces were there because if they were not there, something worse could have happened. I don't know. So the forces sometimes are blamed because they have a dog, sometimes are blamed because they don't have a dog. So I would not start blaming the forces because maybe they were doing the right thing, which to safeguard peace or to avoid more killings and so on.
So he's not willing to take a stance on Zimbabwe, and that talks to the point that African leaders always want to play it safe. They never want to speak out against what some would call blatant disregard for democracy or the law. Let's then talk about leaders who are in power for years and years and years, yonks if you want to call it. What are they saying about that?
Well, it was very interesting to hear the perspective. For example, they were very categorical in saying, a lot of states should make sure that the Constitution is respected. And right in the words of President Chissano, he stated very clearly in saying, look, no one should tinker or try to change the country's constitution, especially to benefit one person. And it's really interesting because we know the DRC very soon is also going to the elections, and the outgoing President Kabila, thankfully, will not be standing, and also a move that has been widely welcomed. So there was a very clear indication that leaders should know that there is life post-presidency.
They have to respect the law of their countries. If the law of their countries allows them to stay forever, then they stay forever. But if not, they have to follow what the law says. I cannot go to any monarchy and tell the king to step down, because that is a kingdom and the law says that he stays forever. But when the law says that they have to have elections every 5 years, they have elections, and who loses step down. If they say that they are allowed to stand for elections 2 times, then they proceed like that.
And Kaya, of course, terrorism is a major issue on the continent. What's the plan to address that?
Well, they also touched a bit on that. And you know, Shahan, when you look at, for example, East Africa, there's a threat of Al-Shabaab, and also you look at the northern parts of Africa, in the Maghreb region, there's Tuareg rebels, when you look at countries like Mali. So it's another issue that they also spoke at length about. But what is always worrisome, it's how they try to address the issue. So at times, it's always very unclear as to what is the plan. Do they have a blueprint? And going forward, for example, what are they going to do to make sure that they destabilize some of these terrorist forces?
All right, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Our reporter, Kaya Khumalo.